Joan, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate being here.
So we've been talking about this whole subject of HR. There's an idea that HR is so damn confusing. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's confusing because we make it that way, right?
You're an HR person saying you make it this way. What do you mean by that?
So we have a form for everything.
Yeah.
And then, we don't do triplicate anymore because we have computers, but we can produce them quicker, right?
No more carbon forms? Okay.
No more carbon forms.
Okay.
But we do. We have this gatekeeper mentality.
Yeah.
And there are literally hundreds of things that happen in the HR arena, from the very start of filling out an application to transitioning outside the organization.
So we were talking about this. Do you think that's really what it is? Is there more to it? Why so many CEOs look at HR and just say, man, this is more of a like you said, gatekeeper. It's more of covering my butt, but that's not really the role of HR.
No, it's not. And I think it's evolving. We have a lot of enlightened people, but the balance isn't there yet.
Yeah,
and
no kidding.
so we just need to be better engaged with what's the business about.
Yeah.
We've for too long has said HR that is a separate entity, and it's not. It's a part of the business. If it weren't for the business, we wouldn't need people. If it weren't for people, we wouldn't run the business. So we have to figure out a way to connect the two.
So we talked about this, but that's true. No question about it. Why do you think it's gotten to a point where those have been disconnected?
Well, because people look at single processing. And when I see something, I want to know and understand what happened before I got this and what's going to happen after I turn it over to somebody else. It's that whole accountability model, right?
Sure.
And just really understanding your role in the value stream.
You were showing me some stats earlier today around the value of HR if HR is working to engage the employees the right way.
Right. It's around the employee experience.
Yeah. So what were some of those stats that you were talking to me about earlier?
So when an employer pays attention to how an employee experiences their interactions at work is really just an excuse for people to exercise their talents, right?
That's a good way to put it.
And to deliver it so that it benefits somebody else.
Yeah.
We're not there for ourselves, really. We get paid, we give something back, but it's so that we can benefit someone else. So when an employer pays attention to what that experience is, engagement is a result and an outcome of the experience. It's not the driver.
Okay.
And that whole continuum of what we do with people from the time we first start talking to them to when we put them in their jobs is really, really a critical factor, and tying it back to the business goals. So when I start working for an organization, if I don't know what the business does, how can I deliver?
You won't be able to help.
I won't be able to help.
No question.
Right. So in a former organization I worked with was around healthcare.
Yeah.
We hired a lot of people in customer service that were 18 to 22 years old.
Sure.
Still on their parents' health insurance, right?
Yeah.
This was way before the 26-year-old rule. And so as a result, they weren't really consumers. They didn't understand what the benefits were.
What they were actually doing in the first place.
Yeah, so the training was harder. And we found that when we hired people who were a little bit older, who had that experience, they understood it better.
So that piece actually makes a lot of sense, and it takes some of the confusion, because that's kind of the question, right? Why is HR so confusing? That makes sense. If they don't understand, if they're not the consumer, they're not going to understand how to deliver that particular service.
Right.
But going back to what you suggested in terms of the performance.
Right.
There was some stats from the Harvard review that you showed me earlier. When HR isn't viewed as so confusing and it's actually working, what does it do for my business? That's the conversation that started this whole thing with you and I.
It is, and it's 4 times the revenue.
Say that again.
4 times the revenue. Harvard Business Review study done last year says you get 4 times the revenue out of somebody who has a positive employee experience versus someone who doesn't.
Okay, so that to me as a CEO is not confusing at all.
Right.
So if I do this with my HR team, I get potentially 4 times the revenue. I think there was 4 times the profit per person and all this kind of stuff. There's no confusion in that based upon what Harvard said, or Harvard Review said.
Right. And the other number that I thought was pretty spectacular too was that the employees who develop at 1.5 times better of
because
a
they're
pace
engaged.
Because they have that positive experience, right? Which does drive engagement. So that can reduce training dollars too.
So then what you're telling me is HR really isn't confusing. It's about driving the performance of the business.
It is.
And it's kind of an overused term, but that's really what it comes down to.
That's what it has to be about.
But we made it more confusing than what it should be in the first place.
Because we have too many doggone forms.